Jeff Rains coming to you again with Foundation of Civilization and Our Changing World. And this week we've had another number of interesting events occur from around the world, and this is my review of what's happening. What has been happening? What is the preliminary cause of the Air India crash from back in June? What did the U.S. president do this week to reduce USA's dependency on China for rare earth minerals? And who is calling for violence in the United States? And what's a simple solution that they are ignoring? It is July 12th, 2025, and this is my weekly rundown of world news. Our world runs on energy, so that's where I usually start, and that's where I'm starting this week. Oil. West Texas Intermediate crude is at $68.45, a barrel. Brent is at $70.36, and the OPEC baskets are at $71.23. Gold ended the week at $3,355.95. Silver ended the week at $38.42. The Baltic Dry Goods Index ended the week at $1,465. The bond market. The United States 10-year bond ended the week at 4.412%, and the UK bonds ended the week at 4.628%, and the Japanese bonds ended at 1.506%. All of them up slightly this week. Now, the bond market, I want to forewarn everybody that the bond market is where you need to be watching. That is going to be the leading indicator as to when we're going to have financial problems. Recently, there have been a lot of harsh words by the U.S. administration directed at the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. The complaint is that Powell has maintained the Federal Reserve's interest rate relatively high compared to the past 20 years, especially since 2008. The Federal Reserve is supposed to use interest rates to keep inflation low. Well, inflation has been low for the past few months, and so the administration is looking for interest rates to drop and let investments be unleashed on the economy. Part of the trouble is that the U.S. economy has gotten used to manipulated interest rates that hover near zero. That's artificially low, and it's not. I don't think that's where they need to be, but then again, I also don't think they need to be as high as they are right now. The deeper problem is that a lot of debt, and this is what the administration is feeling right now, a lot of debt is coming due, and they're going to have to issue new debt to cover the old debt. The government has not cut its spending, so it'll have to issue new debt and cover the new spending. However, this time, the debt will not be at low rates. It will be at much significantly higher rates, at 2 or 3 or 4 times as much as it has been in the past. When the markets show that they don't believe that the bonds are going to get paid back, even with high interest rates, that's when we see the debt death spiral. And this is what we have to watch for. This year, we've already had a couple of debt sales where many investors walked away from the counter and didn't buy up all the debt. And this isn't a problem just for the United States. It is also a problem. It is especially a problem for Japan. In fact, it may be Japan that goes first in the inflation spiral. Keep an eye on the bond markets, and that's what they'll do to solve the problem, is that they'll just start printing money and issuing it, sending it out to wherever. Watch the bond markets. That's why I keep reporting on them, to let you know what's going on with them. And I'd like to get a little more in depth into it, but this is the best I can do for now, until I get really focused on what's happening, and or unless you're really focused. Unless I can actually get paid for doing this, and I can spend more time focusing on what's really happening. Military and naval deployments. The ISR aircraft are doing a lot of the same things that they have, looking over the southern U.S. border and into Mexico. They continued their surveillance of the western mountains, but there are some heightened surveillance along the west coast and a bunch of flights in the Northeast. Uh, that refocus of energy is rather interesting to me. So, in the Navy, we lost a ship again this week. We're back down to 292. We were at 293 last week. 98 of them are deployed, 84 are underway. USS George Washington had a port visit in Manila and departed into the Philippine Sea and is likely conducting operations or exercises. The USS America departed Sydney after a port visit, and Carl Vinson is operating in the Arabian Sea. The Abraham Lincoln, last we heard, was in San Diego. The USS Harry Truman remains resting in Norfolk, Virginia from its wounds from the last trip. The USS Nimitz is operating in the Red Sea along with the Carl Vinson. The USS Ronald Reagan, last I had, showed it was still away from Bremerton, Washington. No word on exactly where it is. The USS Tripoli is in Sasebo, Japan. USS Wasp, last we heard, was in Norfolk. The Iwo Jima was conducting operations in the Western Atlantic. The Gerald R. Ford departed Norfolk for a regularly scheduled deployment. This is actually a couple weeks ago. No word on exactly its whereabouts at the moment. The USS George H.W. Bush is conducting operations in the Western Atlantic. Now, also, it was rather interesting that the Chinese carrier Shandong departed Hong Kong after its first port visit to the city. It departed and headed into the South China Sea, which puts it not too far away from U.S. forces. And that, hopefully there's nothing to worry about with that. And hopefully they don't get too close to each other. As far as the European markets go, the DAX ended the week at 24,255.31. The FTSE ended the week at 8,933.72. CAC ended the week at 17,823.22. And the IBEX 35 ended the week at 14,009.20. Attacks between Ukraine and Russia continued. Several heavy attacks came from Russia into Ukraine, especially Kyiv. Wednesday, Russia launched its largest missile and drone attack since the start of the invasion in February 22. This was targeting the western part of the country. The Ukrainian Air Forces said that they found 728 drones and 13 missiles were used during an overnight bombardment. And they added that its air defense systems intercepted 711 drones and at least 7 missiles were destroyed. This latest air assault beat out Russia's previous record of 550 drones and missiles set earlier this month. Now, I'll get into it a little bit later, but keep an eye on those numbers. 730 drones one day. It's 550 drones another day. I need to come back to those a little bit later. There's another story that I ran across actually in just a couple of steps here. As a result, apparently, of the U.S. president's frustration with the Russian president, and after a brief pause, the administration has resumed sending weapons to Ukraine. This was directly, the week before they had said that we're going to stop because they were concerned about stockpiles, how many weapons the United States had remaining. The weapons that they plan on sending include Patriot missiles, precision-guided GMLRS, Hellfire missiles, 155mm howitzer rounds. This reversal took a lot of people by surprise. A lot of people outside of the administration by surprise. So, State Department, Ukraine. As I mentioned, the U.S. president seems to be losing patience with the Russian president and accused him of being disingenuous in dealings with Washington. He used an explicative too. He says, "We got a lot of bull bullpucky, not an exact quote, thrown at us by Putin. This was while the president was at the White House on Tuesday. He went on to say that he's very nice and all, but it turns out to be meaningless. So the Russian president, I believe, understands diplomacy. Diplomacy is primarily the art of deception. Now, I noted the number of missiles, or the number of drones that were being fired. The U.S. Army has already made plans to purchase additional Patriot missiles. This coming from the Army, the acquisition goal for the Patriot Advanced Capability 3 would quadruple the number of missiles that we have if Congress grants the Pentagon the request. That'll go from 3,376 to 1,373. Considering all the missiles that are coming and going, we're going to need quite a bit of them. If Russia's going to send over 700 drones in a single attack, and mind you, every attack is countered by 2 Patriot missiles. Though those acquisitions, the new Patriot missile acquisitions, will get used up very quickly. Add to this the fact that each missile costs $4 million, and the U.S. defense budget can burst very quickly. The drones are far cheaper to produce, and swarms can overwhelm any defense system, even the best available. This is a problem for not just the United States, but also Israel in its war with Iran, and now the USA plans to build an upgraded missile defense system called the Golden Dome. We're looking at a lot of money that's going to be allocated for defense spending, additional defense spending. This week, Ukraine saw one of their intelligence leaders assassinated. It was a Colonel Ivan Voronich. Excuse me. Please don't be offended at my stumbling through the name. Voronich. He was a senior operations officer with Ukraine's security service, and as he was crossing the street near a block of flats in the capital, Kyiv, Holosivsky district, a man approached him with a silenced pistol and shot him, killing him on the spot. Over in Germany, the Germans are looking at purchasing an additional 15 F-35s, which would bump their number up to 50. The F-35 is a capable airframe, and it doesn't have the legs of the F-22, but then again, a European weapon system doesn't need to have the legs of the F-22. This week, French intel has noted that Russia is conducting, they've ramped up their psychological operations. This was an interview with Nicholas Lerner, head of the DGSC Foreign Intelligence Agency. He was interviewed by a French broadcaster, LSI, and he cited an incident last year in which suspected Russian saboteurs placed coffins near the Eiffel Tower, draped in the French flag, bearing the inscription, "French soldiers of Ukraine." And for those of you who don't know, there's actually quite a few French soldiers that are fighting in Ukraine. Some of them are mercenaries, former French soldiers. Some of them, probably French special forces. So they're trying to send a message that your soldiers are not safe in Ukraine. Lerner noted that they are not amateurs. He says they reflect a desire to disrupt our information space and undermine trust in our institutions. He said about 80 Russian agents were active in France before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, and that 50 of them have since been expelled. This week in Asia, the Nikkei ended the week at 39,531.46. The SSE Index ended at 3,518.90. The Hang Seng ended the week at 24,172.91. The BSE Sensex ended the week at 82,559.22. And the Nifty 50 ended the week at 25,140.70. I asked you what was the preliminary indication on what happened to the Air India flight. On June 12th, the Air India flight took off from Ahmedabad and suddenly lost power. It appears that the fuel switch had been flipped and had been cut off before impact. Investigators are speculating if the pilots were unfamiliar with the aircraft, or not familiar enough with the aircraft, I should say, and they flipped the switch accidentally. This resulted in the death of 260 people, about 230 on the aircraft and about 30 on the ground. In Myanmar, there was an airstrike at a Buddhist monastery that ended up killing 23 people. They were a group of people who were taking shelter in the compound. The overnight aerial attack was in the Lintalu village in Sagaing. This is in the Sagaing region and the township of Sagaing. There were about 30 people injured. Like I said, 23 who passed away. 10 are still in critical condition. There was a resistance member who noted that there were about 150 people from the nearby village who were taking shelter to avoid the fighting in the region. Gunmen in southwestern Pakistan, the Zob and Loralai districts of Balochistan, stopped two passenger buses on the highway on Thursday night and abducted and killed 9 people. Balochistan is a disputed area. They want to declare their independence from Pakistan. They don't feel like they're being represented by the leaders in Karachi. These buses were traveling from the provincial capital of Quetta to the Punjab province. Over the past couple years, China has been noted as changing their tactics in the South China Sea. This is coming from Admiral Stephen Kohler, the commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. He says, and I quote from an AP article, China's tactics have grown steadily and more aggressive with rammings, water cannons, lasers, and sometimes worse. Despite these bullying tactics, China has failed to intimidate the Southeast Asian claimants into surrendering their sovereign rights. In the Middle East, there are a number of basic lessons that we can learn from the attacks between Iran and Israel. Iran responded to Israel's aircraft bombings, with missile attacks, and they discovered that Israel is able to intercept 90% of the 500 to 550 missiles that Iran launched at Israel. Apparently 36 of the Iranian missiles penetrated Israeli defenses and detonated in population centers, killing 28. They inflicted thousands of injuries and displaced over 13,000 Israelis. Meanwhile, Israel is also urging the United States to resume strikes on Yemen's Houthis. The Houthis have decided to restart their attacks on shipping in the Red Sea. In fact, this week, there was a Liberian flag cargo ship in the Red Sea and that was attacked and sunk. 3 mariners were killed and 2 others wounded. And actually, I believe one of those that were wounded has succumbed to his injuries, so the number is up to 5. A European Union naval force on Tuesday are highlighting the danger of the group's renewed campaign targeting a key maritime route for international trade. Yemen sits right on the path, and so it's easy for them to take target and attack vessels as they come by. The United States will revoke the designation of, and I hope I get this name right, please don't be offended if I don't, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS. They're revoking the designation of them as a terrorist organization. This will allow Washington to soften its approach to post-war Syria following the fall of Bashar al-Assad last year. The decision takes effect on Tuesday and comes as part of the U.S. president's broader strategy to re-engage with Syria and support its reconstruction with more than a decade of devastating conflict. This revocation is an important step in fulfilling the president's vision of a stable, unified, and peaceful Syria. This according to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. There was an explosion in southwestern Yemen. 5 children were killed. The children were outside playing soccer, and according to a rights group. And it's unclear as to what the cause of the explosion was. There are some rumors that there might have been an artillery shell that was fired into the area. In Africa, the fight between Sudanese army and paramilitary rapid support forces has escalated in Sudan's central Kordofan region. At least 4 people were killed, according to health workers that spoke to AP on Friday. Sudan's paramilitary forces launched artillery shelling on neighborhoods in Obed City, the capital of North Kordofan province, on Thursday night. Coming from Kenya, at least 8 Kenyans died, more than 80 were receiving specialized treatment on Wednesday, with some sustaining gunshot wounds during a countrywide protest against police brutality and poor governance. The state-funded Kenya National Commission on Human Rights reported monitoring countrywide demonstrations, leading to over 400 injuries and more than 60 arrests during Wednesday's protest. This is across 23 of the 47 counties. The protests are tied to the 1-year anniversary of anti-tax demonstrations in which 60 people were killed and 20 others remain missing. In the Americas, the Dow Jones Industrial Average ended the week at 44,410.88. S&P ended the week at 6,258.40. And the NASDAQ ended the week at 20,583.84. On August 1st, new tariffs will be implemented on Canada. Thursday, a letter was sent to Canadian Prime Minister, and this ups the tariffs from 25% to 25% to 35%. And this is an effort, allegedly an effort, to get Canada to crack down on fentanyl smuggling, despite the relatively modest trafficking in the drug in that country. I think that there's something more behind it, but and my best guess is that it's leverage for the president to be able to implement the policies, the trade policies that he wants, more than anything else. Now, not to be left out, the U.S. president is planning on increasing tariffs on Mexico and the EU. He's increasing them from, I believe it's 25% right now, to 30%. Good news on jobs reports. The latest jobs report showed better than expected increase in jobs. Unfortunately, most of the jobs were in the public sector, so a lot of government's hiring people. But the biggest news of this report is that native-born workers are getting jobs again. Over the past year, jobs for U.S.-born workers increased by 1.7 million, while foreign-born workers lost 543,000 jobs. Wages, in addition to the number of openings, the amount being paid increased slightly also. Now, a lot of the job change is coming because of a self-deportation. So far, an estimated 1 million people have agreed to return to their country of origin, or at least leave the country if they decide they want to go somewhere else. Now, how is the U.S. president reducing our dependency on China for rare earth minerals? Well, this week he opened up an old mine, or a new mine, excuse me. Currently, the United States buys 70% of our rare earth minerals from China. The Department of Energy announced the opening of Ramaco Brook Mine in Wyoming. This is the first new rare earth mine opened in 70 years. And the mine is estimated to have 1.7 million tons of rare earth oxide. Interestingly enough, the application for the mine was filed in 2014. However, bureaucrats stood in the way of opening it. To overcome the red tape, the U.S. president declared an energy emergency on his first day in office, and he signed an executive order saying, we're going to get this done. That swept away the legal and bureaucratic barriers and allowed the mine to open. Another bit of good news is that this week we found out Germany is buying less liquefied natural gas from Russia and more from the United States. The USA is now the #1 exporter or importer to Germany, not Russia. This shifting our NATO ally away from their dependency on Russia and towards the United States. Those devastating floods from July 4th weekend, the death toll has risen to 130, with 300 still missing. Additional flash floods hit several other locations this week in New Mexico, North Carolina, Vermont, and Massachusetts. In New Mexico, they're reporting 3 fatalities, and no word on exact numbers for North Carolina. In Massachusetts, they saw 7 inches of rain. The State Department is reorganizing, and I try to only include articles that are of significant importance. In this case, the State Department is reorganizing, and as of right now, this week, 1,300 employees were let go. Believe the number is supposed to climb to 1,800 total. Now, mind you, there's been a plan to reduce the size of the State Department, and the Secretary of State wanted to reduce redundancy, and the U.S. President issued an executive order directing Mr. Rubio, Secretary Rubio, to revamp the Foreign Service to ensure that the President's policy is faithfully implemented. Now, mind you, there was a lot of hand-wringing and tears streaming down faces as they left, but I want people to remember that Syria went into a civil war, and that Libya completely fell apart, and we don't recognize it. We still don't recognize it today. It's not really a functioning government. Our State Department orchestrated a coup in the Ukraine. A lot of these people, not only do they need to be fired, a lot of them need to be investigated as to their role and what's going on. In his campaign, the U.S. president promised to release the list of clients for Jeffrey Epstein. This week, the administration became very dismissive about it, and they are facing extreme criticism over the failure to get the list released. I asked you, who is it that's been calling for violence this week? Well, there was an Axios article that interviewed quite a few Democrat representatives in Congress, and they've stated that their constituents are growing tired, and they are calling for violence, marches, and they told the politicians, the Democrat representatives, that they should be willing to take a bullet to push their agenda and end ICE enforcement of the law. What the politicians are not doing is suggesting that they change the law so ICE would not be enforcing the law. They know that that position is unpopular, the position of changing the law, and they'd end up not getting elected. Because if they implement what they want, then we end up with just open borders, and there's no law to really worry about. And these politicians are hearing this from town halls that they're hosting around the country and in their home states. Now, another thing that I want to note on this story, and all the comments that have been made, all the suggestions, and after all of the violence that we've seen so far, none of the Democrat leadership have called for things to calm down. None of them have condemned the violence. Unfortunately, I think that's what they want. They want to see the chaos and the conflict. Now, what have we seen happening recently in the very recent past? The past couple of weeks, in Alvarado, Texas, there was an ambush at the ICE facility. This came as a result of Antifa organizing an ambush, and 11 people have been charged in relation to this incident. One officer was injured, severely injured. Nobody was killed, thank goodness. But the authorities are still seeking an additional subject, Benjamin Hanil Song, and he has been identified as a 32-year-old Dallas resident and a former U.S. Marine reservist. And he's accused of firing 2 AR-style rifles. Additionally, a shooter armed with a rifle and tactical gear ambushed border agents as they walked into work on Monday in McAllen, Texas. The shooter has since been identified as 27-year-old Ryan Luis Mosqueda, who planned to attack border guards stationed at the Rio Grande Valley Annex. Now, last thing that I want to cover. One of those important things that we need to be looking at. Documents released this week show that USAID, which has since been shut down, thank goodness, for 10 years funded a program called Predict. This program was being run out of University of Davis, and it saw 11,000 viruses captured from bats from China's Yunnan province and transferred to the Wuhan lab. The Wuhan lab is actually titled the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It is a bioweapons lab which is closely tied to the Chinese People's Liberation Army. There was a significant amount of money. It was transferred through Echo Health Alliance, which is why Congress eventually banned giving Echo Health Alliance any money in the future. And the lab did not have very good safety protocols. This is truly, totally evil. whoever was involved in this should be investigated and thrown in jail, or under the jail preferably. A total of $210 million was given to the lab through USAID and Department of Defense to support the PLA's bioweapons lab. This is just so they could figure out how to weaponize bat viruses. This is where COVID-19 came from, not from some wet market down the road. They had plausible deniability with Wuhan. Unfortunately, something got out and got to the world. $210 million. And how many people died from this? It was developed for 10 years, and I don't know. I don't get it, and I don't get why people aren't marching in the streets demanding something better from our government. But here we are. Now, that's going to wrap it up for this week. I know I've gone over quite a few things and covered plenty. There are still plenty of things that I didn't even get to. I hope that you guys are doing well. Hope that you're spending time with your family and friends, and you guys are preparing for the changes that are occurring in the world. Hopefully the United States is able to alleviate some of the problems that have been creeping up on us. Much love to everybody. Hope you all have a wonderful week, and I look forward to talking to you all again very soon. Again, Jeff Rains with Foundation of Civilization. Please like, share, and subscribe. Complain below if you like. I'll be plenty happy with that to answer any questions or concerns you have. Thanks again, and we will talk to you again very soon.